third partner webinar for the Zero Net Emissions Agriculture CRC. I'd like to begin just by acknowledging that I am hosting this webinar from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today. We're very conscious that this is a national bid, a national CRC, and we have people, partners from all over the country, which we're very welcome for, and acknowledge that you're on lands of traditional custodians from all over the country. I'd also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are participating in the webinar today. Okay, so today we're just going to go through, as we have with previous partner updates, some of the progress of the CRC, where we're up to at the moment, acknowledging that we are still very much in establishment phase. There is a lot of stuff, I can guarantee, going on behind the scenes, a lot of feet paddling under the water. And we'll run through some of that today in terms of the progress that's being made that might not be immediately visible to partners yet until we actually start getting some of the investments out there on the ground. But I can guarantee that in supporting that happening, there's been plenty that's been going on. So the agenda for today, I'll just give you a little quick update on some of the things that I've been doing. We'll have more of an update about the actual establishment tasks that we've been running through. We'll talk about the Industry Advisory Committee that has now been established. Ben Hayes, the Research Director, will give an update. We'll have Mick Taylor talking about the progress on the establishment or the selection of producer demonstration sites. And Janelle Wilkes, our Education and Training Lead, will give an update on what we're doing there, and we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So I guess I thought I'd just start briefly. You'll see that picture there on the right, the Global Nature Positive Summit, just with a very quick update of that particular event. I've been going to a few events, sort of promoting the CRC and making sure that people know about us and connecting with partners and looking at what our, how we're going to deliver what we're supposed to do to partners and to the broader environment. But that particular summit, the Global Nature Positive Summit, I'm sure many of you would have been aware of it, was the inaugural global summit on nature positive markets that was hosted by the Australian and New South Wales governments in Sydney. It's a very large event with participants from all over the world. Now, while it was about nature positive and biodiversity markets and economies, obviously carbon has a huge role to play in that, and emissions reduction accompanying those nature positive goals. And what was really interesting and to see was just how much of a need there was identified in that summit for the sorts of things that we are going to be providing in the CRC. The emissions factors, the new techniques and practices that are going to be required to work as an emissions reduction technique hand in hand with biodiversity improvements and nature positive improvements. So it's just really encouraging to see how important this CRC is, feeding into that what is a huge global environment now around investment and market development as well. So the priorities that we've been working on, or particularly have been working on, is really getting our investment strategy and project portfolio bedded in. We've been running this process to develop up our fast start or foundation projects, and accompanying that is the broader investment strategy that looks across all of those to see how our portfolio is building up. How much money we're investing against each milestone, how much money we're investing against different risk categories, geographies, how much money we're investing against different sectors in terms of the emissions reduction potential and so on. And then that, as we get really good detail around that, that informs our ongoing investment strategy to make sure that we haven't got any gaps and that we are investing against all our milestones. There's a lot of governance, as sure as you would realise, around doing that appropriately and properly. And so, I've talked about this at the previous updates. That's a process that is maturing now. We're getting very close to having all our committees formed, terms of reference, charters and so on, so that we've got a absolute best practice governance structure around the way that the CRC is going to work, and make sure that we do have great oversight around that investment, to make sure that we're investing for impact. And just lots of other general establishment tasks, completing the recruitment for the CRC, even things like office establishment and so on. It's just been all those little things that really pile up that we've been concentrating on just to get the CRC working. And I had to remind myself this morning when I was looking at that and thinking about it in preparation for this webinar, there's been so much going on. It feels like we've been going for a long time. It is still only 4 months that this CRC has been officially established, in terms of trying to get all those things going. Just a couple of things that will be coming up for CRC members specifically, and members as opposed to partners. So some of the tier 1 and tier 2 partners have elected to become members of the CRC company. We will be providing information to those members very shortly about our inaugural AGM, which will be coming up in December, and you'll be getting more information about that very shortly. And then we've also got a really important exercise that we're going to be running in December with our board, where we're going to be doing a really deep dive around the CRC strategy, and setting investment goals and targets and all sorts of things in relation to that strategy and how we operate. Just to sort of to clarify or highlight a little bit, anyone that's been involved with the formation of the CRC and all the way through will know that there's a very detailed research roadmap that has been part of the CRC bid. This strategy discussion is certainly not about revisiting that. It's about how we implement that. We've got the roadmap. We really need to understand the strategy around how we actually go about implementing that roadmap to make sure that we're delivering impact. So, we're going to do a really deep dive on that with the directors in December. So that's a quick wrap up from me just on some of the activities, and I'm going to hand over now to our Chief Operating Officer, Georgia Scheel, who's going to give you a bit more about the implementation or establishment tasks that we've been following.
Thank you, Richard, and hello everyone. Great to be with you today. So in past webinars, we'll have seen an overview of our different approval governance structures that would have been presented at the May partner meeting and previous webinars. So today, I'd like to just give you a bit of a highlight reel of some of the achievements and milestones that we've been able to hit since we spoke last 2 months ago. So those include partnerships. So we've now officially executed the Tier 1 and Tier 2 partner agreement and shared counterside documentation with all partners. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone involved in those processes. It's a really significant milestone for the CRC, so thank you. Establishment of committees and our charters, just a little bit. Really, we're in the phase of bedding in our approach and continuous improvement, I'd say, as the theme there. So for almost all of our committees, we're in the second cycle, making really good progress in establishing things like our processes, ways of working, really integral policies for governance and operations, as well as our projects. So Ben will be talking to that in more detail in a few minutes. And look, in this phase, it is continuous improvement. So we'll continue to evolve and grow those processes and really bed them in coming months. But we're off to a really firm start in those 2 cycles for those committees. In the preceding slides, Richard's going to talk to the industry advisory panel. So notably, following an expression of interest process, the evaluation and appointment of the industry advisory panel is now almost complete. So Rich will be able to speak to you that in a couple of minutes. So that's also a significant milestone from an establishment perspective. A few other bits and pieces I thought I'd share. So systems evaluation, so critical to the management and governance of our portfolio of investments. We do need a really robust investment management system here at the CRC. So we've undergone a thorough evaluation of systems, and we're on track to select and implement in 2025. So that's progressing nicely internally. Probably notably for you on the call is that the solution we do implement will have a partner portal. So this will give you better visibility over your organisation's involvement in projects and things like in-kind allocations as well over time. So that's going to be a critical, an important part of our infrastructure for all of you. And I look forward to sharing more about that in the new year. So preparing for contracting, so getting all of those systems and processes underway, I thought I would just give a call out that we will be moving forward with bringing on board a contractor to support us regarding research projects and contracting. So knowing that we've got a lot of people on this call, if you know of anyone that you think is wonderful and potentially looking for an opportunity like that, then please don't hesitate to reach out directly from me. I really welcome a warm introduction. And then finally, just today, we submitted our very first quarterly report to the department. So that's a significant milestone for us. And for those of you that are across it, it's a key requirement of the grant agreement, and we will continue to report quarterly to the Commonwealth for the life of the CRC. Input from the entire team on that one. So just want to recognise the team for getting that over the line for the very first quarter. Importantly, for everyone on the call, part of our reporting is around in-kind. Now, of course, for project in-kind, we'll be able to report on that via our systems and processes, but we will be coming out to all of you before the end of the year to collate any non-project in-kind, which we can also report on to the Commonwealth as well. So that's something that's coming down the line from an operations perspective as well. And that's everything from me. Just a couple of highlights for the last 2 months, and I'll pass back to Richard.
Thanks, Georgia. So as Georgia mentioned, we're really excited now that our Industry Advisory Committee is nearly complete. Just to recap what the Industry Advisory Committee is going to be, what its role, its scope and remit. It's an advisory committee that is really designed to give that industry input into our investments, into projects and other investments as well, on things like commercialisation strategies, that the industry needs in relation to all the proposals that are going forward, the commercialisation prospects, pathways to market, adoption potential, and so on. And also, to really just be that connection point, very immediate connection point between the CRC and broader industry. Now, given that we are an all of agriculture research organisation, broad industry is a wide scope, and it was a challenge for us to try and reflect that really well in terms of the way that we structured the committee without making it too big. So we settled on 8 positions that, as much as possible, were going to represent different geographies, different sectors, and different parts of the supply chain. And so those people that we've selected so far, we actually have 1 still to go. If we could go to the next slide, please, Rachel. Belinda Lay, Naomi Lee, Martin Harmer, Ian Core, Wes Lawrence, Nicola Cotti, Claire Marnie, and we're still looking for 1 from the horticulture sector. So just briefly, just to run through the people on the committee. Belinda is Chief Administration and Finance Executive and Business Partner of Coolandown Farms, which is a family-owned mixed sheep and grain enterprise near Esperance in Western Australia. Naomi is an experienced professional in the beef industry, currently serving as General Manager of Argyle Foods Group, which is an Australian beef supply chain business. Martin is the Australian Research Manager at DLF Seeds, which is a global and based pasture seed company with operations in Australia, obviously, and Denmark in particular. Ian Core is currently serving as the Australian General Manager of Corteva Agriscience and has extensive experience in agricultural innovation and technology. Wes is the Managing Director of Access Tech, which is an Australian ag tech solution provider with a real focus on solving data challenges in agri-food. Nicola Cotti is an innovation broker at the Cotton Research and Development Corporation, and Claire is the head of new ventures and innovation at AACO. So really happy to have such a strong committee supporting the CRC and providing that industry advice from a range of different backgrounds and industries and parts of the supply chain. We'll fill that last position to get that horticulture perspective as well. And then the committee will be fully formed, and we'll be looking to have an induction meeting before the end of the year. Okay, so that's the IAC. I'm going to hand over now to Ben Hayes, our research director, who's going to give you an update on activities.
Thank you very much, Richard, and great to have you all online today. Terrific to see so many people in the webinar. So I thought today I'd just give you a bit of an idea of what I've been focusing on and the program leads have been focusing on as well. So as you all know, our CRC has milestones, and it's really up to the research director and the program leads to make sure we have the projects in place to deliver on these milestones. So just so you have a bit of an insight into our thinking, I thought I'd put up the milestones for the first 3 years, and some of these are actually approaching quite quickly. They're only less than 2 years away that we have to actually deliver on these things. So I thought I'd just show you what these milestones are to remind you, and then talk about how we're planning to deliver on these. So this is a table of the milestones in 2026. The first one is actually the co-design of the Indigenous Academy in the education and training program. So I'll let Janelle describe the work that's going on there. The second one is in Vicky Lane's program, Low Emission Plant Solutions. And it's actually about coming up with emissions efficiency factors for novel fertilisers, biofertilisers that reduce nitrous oxide in cropping, mixed farming and other systems. And it's benchmarking these products. So that's in 2026. Another milestone we have early on in the CRC is to come up with proxy measures for measuring methane from individual cattle and sheep. And this is in Phil Vercoe's program. The reason this milestone is part of the CRC is any of you that have measured methane using existing devices in cattle and sheep know that it's really expensive, and we need to come up with something cheaper so that we can do many, many more animals for both our carbon accounting and for looking at the impact of things like selection strategies, feed additives, and so on. Okay, next slide, thanks. Another milestone in 2027 then is coming up with genomic breeding values. So these are DNA marker-based predictions of the methane emission levels for individual cattle and sheep to enable selection for lower emitting cattle and sheep. So that's a really key milestone and a key delivery out to the grazing industries. Then in Richard Eckart's area, the whole farm and mixed enterprise systems analysis, we have a couple of early milestones. And this is about the carbon accounting and benchmarking, baselines and emerging international benchmarks identified. So this is about reviewing those carbon accounting methodologies, taking into account in those methodologies international innovations and inventory methods, making sure it's compliant with our key export markets, for example. There's another key milestone in Richard Eckart's area, which is about incorporating the data that's going to come out of our producer demonstration sites that Mick's going to describe into those carbon accounting and benchmarking approaches. So that comes up fairly early in the CRC as well. So those milestones have been a key focus of mine and the research team because they do come up early. I'm very pleased to say that we have projects that are either in a contracting phase or a very advanced stage of development that will deliver those milestones. So it looks like we're in good shape at the moment to deliver on those milestones. And I do just want to make a shout out to the program teams that have put those projects, in fact, all our early projects together. It's been a really wonderful example of collaboration across not just the research institutes in the CRC, but also our industry partners, our state government partners. These projects are really delivering on these milestones. They're quite large projects. They're really national, and it's been a wonderful effort to put them together. So I'm going to move now from what's in train to the project development and approvals process. So just to remind you, and many partners will be interested, of course, in putting up new projects, just to remind you of the process that we're using in the CRC. The process is really, if you have a project concept, to contact your relevant program lead. So it's either Vicky for the plant solutions, Phil for methane-free livestock, Richard for farm systems analysis, Marit for delivering value from net zero, and Janelle for the E&T program. Contact your program leads and discuss it with them. The reason we're taking that approach rather than, for example, an open call is those, our program leads are really well across the capacities and capabilities of the different partners. And they're in a really good position to put together teams around concepts that are going to have a big impact on emissions, and put together teams that can go right through from the research to delivery on farm. So in terms of putting together impactful projects, they're in a great position. So they are the first point of contact. And just to remind you of the approvals process, the development process, you'll talk to them, a project will get developed. Once it's in really good shape to the satisfaction of the project leads, it will go up to the Research Advisory and Management Committee for discussion. And that Research Advisory and Management Committee consists of myself and all the leads. Sorry, Rachel, can you just go back one slide? And I would point out that for our milestones that aren't very early in the CRC, that are coming a little bit later, there's going to be a series of workshops around those milestones and developing the projects around those milestones starting next year. So they'll be well publicised, but look out for those partner workshops. Okay, so just to keep going through this process, the project will come to the Research Advisory and Management Committee. The project may get further built out at that point. Additional delivery partners and so on may be contacted for their interest. Once the project is developed to the satisfaction of the RAMIC, it will then go to the Research, Investment and Commercialisation Committee. And this is a subcommittee of the board that will examine the project in detail against the criteria that you've all seen in the project templates and so on. The project will also go to our new and big welcome to our Industry Advisory Committee. And they will assess the project through the lens of value to industry and particularly delivery to farmers and to our industry through our industry partners. Once the project is developed to the satisfaction of the RIC, the Research Investment and Commercialisation Committee, with input from the Industry Advisory Committee, the final step, next slide, thanks Rachel, is to put it up to the board for the final approvals or feedback. So that's the process that we're going through for project development and approvals. And that really concludes my section of the webinar. So I'll hand back to you, Richard.
Thanks, Ben. And I think I'm going to hand straight on to Mick, who's now going to run through where we're up to with the selection of the producer demonstration sites.
Thanks, Richard. I don't have any slides up, Rachel.
Yeah, it's up, Mick. Mick, the slide's up for others to see.
I can't see them though, mate. I'm just trying to see where they've gone.
Okay.
All right. We'll just run with it. I can't see them at the moment, so just bear with me. We're on slide 1. I'm guessing there's a map up there. We've seen that map before. Last time we spoke, we talked about the large scale of expressions of interest we got. The more we dug into them, they are absolutely awesome. Incredible what we've got. Nearly 70 from a whole raft of providers, and it's taken a lot longer than we expected to dig into them. Realistically, every single one of them were relevant and could be acted on. But what we've been doing since we last spoke was we've developed a scoring system for every single one of the projects that were put forward or the proposals that were put forward, and we've gone through and scored them individually. So we've basically got an independent score sheet, 10 questions where each of the reviewers, and the reviewers come from the program leads and the Z&E CRC committees and staff, and we've gone through them individually and scored them not only about how they fit into the agroecological area, but how they best fit with the research that's available, how they can best be acted on to get those early milestones that both Ben and Richard spoke about, but also how we can then scale up from those ones. So quite a bit of work's going on. At the stage now, we've designed a strategy. It's going to the advisory committees and ultimately with the aim of having the first few sites up early in 2025. And our aim is to have this to the board for final tick off by the end of this year. Next slide, please. Now, the next slide should have a couple of pillars on it. The approach we've taken here, being such a complex area, trying to roll out innovative new research across such a large area and on different agroecological zones and commodities, with milestones and later ones and commercialisation processes. How we've done it is we've broken the delivery into 3 phases. The first phase will be a pilot phase starting in 2025, where we'll have 7 sites around the nation, and we will work with the producers, the researchers, the service providers, and obviously the partners, all affiliated in that region, to help develop and test the PDS strategy. There's a lot of things that we're going to need to deliver this in a meaningful way. Data protocols, contracting pathways, impact and ways to measure impact and baselining. And so the protocols, the tools, the data formworks, they'll all be developed in phase 1 in a very hands-on manner with the relevant states and territories and producers that have put an expression of interest in. Now, this approach allows almost a multi-pronged approach where we've got not only the researchers and the producers, but also the next end user participating in the design of phase 1. By the time we get to the end of 2025, these hubs will continue into the research phase as described in the PDS approach that the CRC has, but they will be at the leading edge of it, showing us how and where and what to do. More importantly, what will come out of this section, there'll be a selection of participants that will be identified and invited to participate in a community of practice. So that's simply a group of experts that are working in this space, representing their local community or commodity or research project to make sure that we are evolving and continuing to improve what we find in the pilot and how to do it better. As we move into phase 2 is where we start to onboard more. So phase 1 next year, 7 sites around the country to help us get it all going. Then in 26 through to 2030, we'll start to onboard the actual demonstration sites proper, using the initial ones, the initial 7, and then adding a further 13 sites over the next few years as the research, and we'll scale up as that research starts coming out. Some of the research will be hitting the early fast track targets, and some of it will be a little bit more a longer tail that will take a while before it can be put on a paddock or tried at scale. So we'll start onboarding those, keep maintaining and improving that system. But the idea is that by the time we get to 27, 28, when we're really getting into the meat and potatoes of the research, we've got a really solid protocol and system for stacking that data and measuring the impact over time. Now, the really cool bit is the next phase, phase 3, from 2030, 31 through to 34, the end phase, we'll bring on another 5 hubs, which will really focus on taking it from demonstration through to a commercial product and trials. The aim is that out of the phase, the final phase is to make sure we've got the best available research on as many sites as we can. So we've got a really core way of delivering that at scale, and then moving that into what's a commercial product look like? How can we make that ready on the shelves today for producers, or integrated into reporting systems, or basically creating that legacy product. Now onto the last slide. The last slide there has got a bit of a spread, like it's basically explosion diagram of how we see the hubs and the spokes in these different sites working. As I said, there's so many moving parts with the research, with the stakeholders involved, with the industry, and it's a really dynamic part. With everything moving so fast at the moment, we've got to keep accurate and relevant as this evolves over the next decade. So the final slide there talks about how this approach of having a hub and spoke, or a group of producers and researchers working together. And the idea is saying that at the very minimum, whether it's a research station that's doing some proof of concept stuff, or it's a group of advisors or service providers working with those researchers or the core producers, the idea is that we've got skin in the game at the cutting edge of what's happening, so it's being diffused across multiple channels. So if there's an advisor sitting there along the same framework of what MLA did with the industry advisor network and their stuff, that there's an opportunity that they're getting the right model of language and training and exposure that they need. Producers are getting it what they need at a farm level, and the industry is being kept aware and awake to what's happening, so that we get to the stage where there's an active participation all the way through, particularly until we get to that commercialisation stage. So that's the final bit of it. So ultimately, there's an element in there in that slide that shows there's participation points at different levels, but under a common goal to achieve the milestones set by the CRC for the PDS. That diagram actually came from some of the work that Ruth Nettle and her team from Melbourne Uni, and she's provided us quite a bit of reading on what is at the cutting edge of producer demonstration sites and extension globally, and we basically compounded or grown on that sort of thing to show how that this is going to be accurate and available to all, regardless of what component of the industry you're in over the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. Some really exciting stuff going on there, and really going to be a core part of the CRC as we build through the life of the CRC. And I think we've got a really great program now about how we're going to be able to do that in a very determined way, using that staged approach and building over time. I'm going to hand over now to our education and training lead, Janelle Wilkes, who's going to give an update on the activities that are happening in that area.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you very much, Mick, for outlining the PDS, because of course education and training is going to be really closely linked to the producer demonstration sites. So Mick and I have been working really closely on that. So as you're already aware, I'm sure that we've got our 5 pillars in education and training of the PhD training, the Indigenous Academy, the industry training, the undergraduate modules, and also the teacher professional development. So excitingly, we have got PhD students that will be, the scholarships are going through the contracting phase at the moment in those foundational projects. And so I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes regarding the legal agreements that are going to be underpinning those and the processes by which we're going to be supporting our PhD students. So based off the learnings from other CRCs, we'll be developing a training program to support these PhD students coming through. There's also a very strong focus in education and training team to support the Indigenous Academy. And so we've developed a draft at the moment of a scoping study, which will become available for tender later in the year for an Indigenous consultant to complete. So the draft is currently with our CRC's Indigenous partners who aren't going to be tendering for that. And we're going to be, of course, including their really valuable feedback into that scoping study. So the 4 main themes within that scoping study are going to be the co-design of the Indigenous engagement strategy, the co-design of the Indigenous Academies framework, and that includes Indigenous partner-focused work integrated learning opportunities, which you saw is a really early milestone for the CRC. Also developing the position description of the Indigenous Liaison Officer and the co-design of the approach to be taken to include additional Indigenous partners into the CRC. We, of course, also have industry training and working out what those needs are. We certainly were told what they were during the bid phase, and so actioning by mid next year, we'll be going back out to industry to check that these are correct moving forward. There's also a lot of positive enthusiasm from the universities regarding the inclusion of materials from the zero net emissions from Ag CRC into our undergraduate teaching. So that's a work in progress at the moment because we are still working through the legal agreements to establish that. And the teacher professional development is a later milestone, and so we're actioning that later. So thank you, and passing back to you, Richard.
Okay, so that's it for the presentations. We've got plenty of time now for Q&A. There is a Q&A button up the top of the screen if people want to start putting any questions in, if you have got any. Just to let you know as well that the next webinar will be on Tuesday, the 17th of December, where we hope to really, be talking about some tangible progress in investments and projects that we can announce by then. I'd also, just before we get into Q&A, just like to, really highlight the effort that the team has been putting in over this last 4 months behind the scenes. Hope you just get a little bit of a picture there of the amount of work that's been going on. I do know that not a lot of it's necessarily completely visible externally at the moment, because it is all about setting up those things behind the scenes, the processes, the governance, even the sort of legal things around PhD agreements that Janelle was just talking about. But there has been an extraordinary amount of work and effort that's been going in from all the team into doing that, and just sort of really like to acknowledge that. I'd also like to really acknowledge all of our partners who have been working so collaboratively with us to put investments together and acknowledge the patience that's been shown as we do develop our processes, and that, you know, there has been process development as we've gone on, which every new organisation has, as we adjust and recalibrate, and, you know, acknowledge that the patience from the partners as we've gone through those processes in getting things in place. Okay, so if we've got any questions now, if you want to, I'm not sure whether we can see hands up or whether you want to type them into the, okay, so will the CRC quarterly report to government be available to members? The short answer is no. There is absolutely no way you would like to see that, to be flippant about it. The quarterly report is essentially a gigantic Excel workbook that is the standard template that we report to government through. It's not very user-friendly at all. It's really not designed as a report as such that's consumable. What we can do, though, is commit that the information that's in there more generally will be the sort of information that you'll be starting to see in annual reports and more sort of the partner and public information that we'll be releasing much more frequently, actually, once we start making investments and putting that out there. So the information that's in there will certainly form some of those reports. The report itself is a very cumbersome, technical, great big spreadsheet. So we won't be making that public. Okay, nothing else popping up just now. So I'll just give it another minute, otherwise I'm going to be able to give 15 minutes back to everyone's day. Okay, well, last call. All right, I think that's it. So look, thank you everyone very much for joining us. We'll be running these webinars frequently, as just pointed out before. The next one will be in December. Really looking forward to continuing engagement, and thank you for joining again.